I was born in 1812, same year as Napoleon was defeated in Russia and the final American and Great Britain conflict began. I grew up in the shadow of an 18th century England. This was a pre-industrial nation of sheep, hedgerows and farms, and an aristocracy still tied to their tenants by the seasonal cycles of agriculture. And at Christmas time their large houses would be filled with light, music and carol singing, and large roasting fires, a celebration of winter to make it through the dark months before spring. Now I spent my happiest childhood years in Portsea, that's near Portsmouth. When I was 10, my spendthrift father moved the family to London, Camden Town, then a straggling suburb surrounded by fields. This is where later my father was confined to the Marshalsea prison for debt, and my education was delayed by my being sent to work in a blacking factory. I believed that I would never be clean again. The experience of these hardships fueled my work and my ability, not only to write but to create populist, commercially successful work. It also created a deep nostalgia that permeates within much of my work. I also wrote and published and edited for at least 17 years 2 weekly magazines which served before your film, television and radio as primary home entertainments. I was also interested in memorable characters and what happened when, as Scrooge's nephew says, men seem by one consent to open their shut hearts freely. I felt an earnest and humble desire, and shall do till the day I die, to increase the stock of harmless cheerfulness. I felt that the world was not to be utterly despised. I was anxious to find, if I could, in evil things that soul of goodness which the Creator had put in us all. I was anxious to show that virtue may be found in the byways of the world, and that it is not incompatible with poverty and rags. My influence as a Christmas storyteller continues to the present day. Christmas storytelling, it defines the season from How the Grinch Stole Christmas to A Wonderful Life, from school pageants to an annual production of A Christmas Carol. Now it is from this story that I would just like to read you, if I may, a little extract. The Phantom and Scrooge went into an obscure part of the town. Among his infamous houses was a low-browed beetling shop, where iron and old rags, bottles and bones were bought, and sitting amongst his wares that he dealt in was a grey-haired rascal of nearly 70 years of age. A woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. She had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too. She was closely followed by a man in faded black. "Charwoman first," she cried, who had entered first. "Laundress second, and here's the undertaker's man." The charwoman threw her bundle on the floor and sat on a stool, looking with bold defiance at the other two. She spoke. "Whatev's their name, Mrs. Dilber? What's the odds? Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did, and who's the wiser? We're not going to pick holes in each other's coats, I suppose?" "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber and the man together. "Then don't stand staring as if you was afraid. Who's the worse for the loss of these things? Not a dead man, I suppose?" "No, indeed," said Mrs. Dilber. If he'd have been natural in his lifetime, he'd have had someone to look after him instead of there lying gasping out his last all alone by himself. It's a judgment on him. I wish this judgment was a little bit heavier, she replied. I would have been if I could have laid my hands on anything else. Open my bundle up, Joe, let me see know the value of it. But the man in the faded black produced his bundle first. A seal or two, a pencil, a pair of sleeve buttons, and a brooch of no great value. Old Joe chalked up the sum he was disposed to give for each on the wall, then added up the total. "That is your account," said Joe. "I would not give you another sixpence if you was to boil me, not for doing it. Now who's next?" Mrs. Dilber was next. Sheets and towels, a little wearing apparel, 2 silver spoons and a pair of sugar tongs. Her account was stated upon the wall. "I always gives too much to the ladies. It is a weakness of mine, and it is the way I shall ruin myself. If you ask me for another penny, I shall repent of being so liberal, and I shall knock half a crown off." "Now do mine. Do my bundle now, Joe," said the first woman. Joe bent down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening it. "Bed curtains?" "Bed curtains," replied the woman, laughing. "You don't mean to say you took 'em down, rings and all, with him lying there? His blankets too? Why not? He isn't likely to take the cold without 'em, I dare say, and that shirt was the best he had, and a fine one or two. They'd have wasted it upon him, they would have done, if it hadn't been for me." "What do you call a wasted of it?" "Well, patting him to be buried in it. Someone was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again." The charwoman laughed, and old Joe counted up their money. This is the end of it, you see. He frightened everyone away when he was alive to profit us when he was dead. "Spirit," said Scrooge, shuddering from head to toe. I see the case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends to be that way now. And now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and those of you who cannot make up your own minds, and are you listening, Frodo? Good. You are yet to hear another variation of this great story, probably the greatest story ever written. It is now my great pleasure and honour to introduce to you my very, very dear friend, Royston McSmith-Packer, Squire, with his unique rendition of Roy Scrooge 2009.